Look at us, back in the studio again, painting a picture of me. Does it look like me? Before we go any further, though, I thought it'd be fun to get a little bit educational. Before we get into any voiceover ramblings, I wanted to dedicate a brief portion of this video to my curiosity that's been building around self-portraits. I feel that painting for some artists is a way to capture something that's fleeting, but in a way that's a bit more personalized than simply taking a photo. To recreate their own version of what's in front of them in a way that, to me, resembles more of a memory than a carbon copy. But I question my gravitation towards having myself be the focal point of a work of art. Because of all the things I could encapsulate creatively, why put more emphasis on something that I see day in, day out in the mirror and have constant photographic evidence of? Arguably too much photographic evidence in this day and age, especially when the other main chunk of my work consists of more surrealist landscapes. I then remember that I, of course, am not the only one in human history to be intrigued by the study and recreation of my own face. So for starters, let's dive into a brief history of the self-portrait. Like any creative innovation, it's very tricky to pinpoint how long ago the first self-portrait was created. However, we can conclude that some of the earliest documented renditions of the self can be dated back 40,000 years. Discovered in a cave in Cantabria, Spain, are markings titled the Panel of Hands. They were done in a style we would now consider negative, with the tracing of red outlines of hands as though done by children. Although this isn't exactly comparable to what we consider a self-portrait now, it demonstrates an early desire for self-documentation and the developing sense of self-actualization. And such fascination with our personal physicality has only continued to develop throughout human history. There were several examples of self-portraiture throughout the Middle Ages, pre-Renaissance, perhaps one of the most notable being the portrait of a man in a red turban by Jan van Eyck in 1433. While it isn't entirely confirmed to be a portrait of the artist himself, it is widely believed to be. If so, this is a fairly revolutionary type of work, I would think, for the Middle Ages, because during this time, artists weren't held at nearly as high praise as they are today. Artists were regarded as manual laborers and craftsmen, and very rarely signed their work, often remaining anonymous. To capture oneself in a work of art in such a pronounced way was likely considered taboo, especially if you consider the fact that art was predominantly depicting religious figures and concepts. Then came the Renaissance, an extremely pivotal time for artists as self-portraiture became widely accepted as an art style, particularly following the influence of German artist Albert Dürer, right on the cusp of the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance period in 1500. As artists became more widely regarded as revered intellectuals, Dürer's work seemed to reflect this shift. His portraits often presented him with perfectly defined curls and wearing the finest garb, and arguably posed in a sort of Christ-like fashion at times. Contrastingly though, many artists over the centuries, and particularly within the Renaissance, would insert themselves into paintings of religious scenes, not as focal points though, but as sort of like background characters, and oftentimes depicted as anti-heroic or experiencing some sort of spiritual misery. An example of this is Michelangelo's Giudizio Universale, where he can be seen near the very bottom of the painting as this sort of lifeless skin. While this era glorified realism and enlightenment, we fast forward to the 1800s and we see artists like Picasso, Van Gogh, Monet, among other artists, who also took interest in self-portraiture but through a more impressionistic lens. Picasso painted and drew self-portraits from as young as 15, many of which embraced this sense of surrealism. Portraits of a more surreal and abstract nature are still a depiction of the self, but I believe them to be more of a depiction of the inner self rather than the superficial. When we look at the early 20th century Mexican artist Frida Kahlo, we see that self-portraits were actually her main motif, as there are 55 known self-portraits that she has done. She has said, "I paint myself because I am so often alone and I am the subject I know best," which I feel speaks on behalf of many artists throughout history, as many of them painted in isolation. Andy Warhol has said that he has made self-portraits as a reminder that he still exists. But I also feel that he seems to use this motif as a way to deconstruct the ego. It's safe to say that art has always been a way to reflect on the state of the world, both inner and outer, and it's evident that the self-portrait is no different. If anything, I would argue that it might be the most intimate form of painting. It seems to mirror how the artist feels about their role within and relationship to the world around them, or how they feel about themselves in general. Which I also find interesting because of the few self-portraits I've done, I've had the people close to me say normally one of two things, and it's either that it looks so much like me or they don't really see it. The latter could be a blow to my confidence, but part of me wonders if these opinions are a reflection of my relationship to said individuals or their perceptions of me. I think I enjoy attempting self-portraits so much because I only know what I look like from a very minuscule perspective, and I wonder if I could ever capture myself in a way that I don't necessarily see, but others might see all the time. To be honest, my main photo references have been selfies, which some might argue are the modern day self-portraits. That can be a whole other video probably, or photos that I was aware were being taken. So I can understand why some people may not think that the paintings look much like me, because even the references are a curation of what I hope or assume people think I look like. In reality, a self-portrait doesn't have to be a spitting image of the self, which I feel like Picasso and Michelangelo have demonstrated. Rather, it can be a representation of the self or the essence of the self. Regardless, it's evident that humans have been transfixed with themselves for a long, long time, and social media culture has affirmed this fact tenfold. But I believe the early self-portraits stemmed from a genuine curiosity and desire to express the individual, as opposed to the desperation in today's culture to be perceived a certain way. And I think I've concluded that I'm trying to lean more into being curious about my physicality rather than judging it. And I think self-portraiture is a really enjoyable means of practicing that. Okay, back to business. We are using burnt umber and black. Right now we're just doing an underpainting and blocking. We're just getting the base layers on. Just blocking out the lighter and darker areas of the portrait, making it a little bit easier, a little less complicated once I do the actual painting. A nice base layer before we go in with the details, and I'm only using burnt umber for this. It's good to use earth tones mainly for underpainting. I mean, you can use other colors, surely. I didn't go to art school. I'm just learning this really as I go, thanks to the internet. Sometimes it's reliable. Sometimes I just don't actually like the methods that it introduces to me, and I like finding my own style. But the underpainting for portraits does help a lot, actually. This is my first self-portrait in oil. I'm really excited about it. And there might be a jump scare here in a moment. All right, don't worry about it. This is my process. This is what I do. It basically, I think I lean more towards an impressionist style, and you're basically deconstructing the subject or the thing you're looking at of all its colors, all of the colors that make it up, because things in real life aren't just one solid color. It's a bunch of colors mixed together, and when you look really closely at things, you can pick up on those different colors. And it looks really cool, and then when you sort of zoom out of the painting, it forms this more cohesive image. But sometimes with impressionists, it still looks quite dramatic with some paintings, and the whole point is to just see all of those different colors even when you zoom out, and it forms this sort of really psychedelic looking piece, which I also think is really fun. That might be what I end up doing this time. I actually have no idea. what this is gonna look like by the end. I'm really gonna need y'all to lock in and trust the process right now. I know it's really hard to, but that's all I ask of you. Thank you. I really wish more people would show the beginning stages of their paintings, because I'm really putting my life on the line here. Let's just say I know my process, and I'm the only person that needs to know my process. And I think this is it for today.